Hi, Mr. Kozel. I probably spent way too much time on this activity, but sometimes when I get into something, I go down the rabbit hole and it just kind of digresses. So here we are. I decided, since I've not taught geometry before and don't quite know an appropriate pace for that, I assumed this lesson over 2 days, given a block time schedule, if you will. I also know that our students definitely impact the pace at which we go. And so this is just a generic thought to start with and where we might go. Also, assuming that I would have the same technology available that we currently have at VCSU, I laid out this particular lesson as if I were teaching my students that the same methodology that I currently use with my math for elementary teachers, like the setup of it. So I always like to start with a class starter of some sort. We go into the lesson, and then I immediately go into group work, and then things that they should be working on. In this case, I would have a choice board. I love choice boards, so they would have some kind of choice board for the chapter that they could be working on, as well as a specific assignment related to this particular unit. You'll notice on the right-hand side that I've got those emojis. I like to incorporate them during class, especially if students are feeling confused. They can use this little confused guy. If they're connecting with an idea or they've had an aha moment, I encourage them to place the emojis on the screen. And it's anonymous, so I don't know who is doing what, but if I see that someone's questioning something, I can slow down, go back, or give another example, etc. We'll then go into, on the first day, we'll go into the standards that we'll be covering, and then of course I like to give the learning objectives for the day. So I would start off our classroom starter using Desmos. I know that you are huge into GeoGebra. I can't help sometimes that I do like to dabble with my Desmos. Sometimes it's my go-to for now, but it's exploring congruent figures. I decided to do this particular activity on congruent figures because it really differentiates between similar and congruent, as I know that those are vocabulary words that students sometimes get mixed up or refer to one or the other in context, because we know that they're not the same, right? So we would go over these together, the particular slides. I can show you the teacher side of it as well. So it starts off with a which one doesn't belong, class starter, if you will, or routine. And then it goes into allowing them to drag and drop and provide reasoning along the way. Depending upon the class, sometimes I may have students do this independently, work through this, or we go through it as a class slide by slide. I have those options, and it really depends upon what my students need at that time. This one, because some slides may take longer than others, I definitely would allow students to go at their own pace, almost like a bell ringer, if you will. So yes, it does go over other shapes, but it's also really driving home the difference between similar and congruent, since we are going to be spending time with congruent triangles. The next thing I would go over is defining that congruent figure, what it means to be congruent after we've talked about it and seen it, and then we can talk about corresponding sides and corresponding angles together, and then listing them out. I would also provide my students with a template of our lessons. So I would, almost like these slides that have the blank spaces in them for them to fill in the blank, which I find even at the collegiate level helps with note-taking skills. It helps with scaffolding, of course, and then just kind of paying attention as we're going so that they know that their notes are accurate. At least the bones of the notes are accurate. So then we would go through the different congruencies, explaining them. I would fill the blue boxes that you see, I would fill them in as a class as we go. So I would start them off blank, and as a class, we would fill them in together as they fill in their notes. Okay. Then we would go into our group work, and I always start and make sure that we're in the right mindset of what it means to have a growth mindset. I do believe in a growth mindset within my math classes, and we really hone in on those skills and focus on that in my math classes. So we would all say the mantra together of these to remind ourselves it's okay if we make mistakes, but we're going to learn from them, and then we're going to create a community of learning together ultimately. So the group work would look like this. Everybody would be on the same slides that we are, and I make sure I share my slides utilizing the edit feature so that anybody with the link can edit just like I can. We also talk about etiquette and what it means to not erase the teacher's slides, if you will, and be respectful towards one another. Even at the collegiate level, we still have that conversation. So at this point in the year, I would imagine we've already gone through those routines and expectations of what that looks like. So group one, both of the slides are the same. It would just be to sort the triangles from the sides onto the slide using the postulate for the congruency proven. So just to verify that they understand the similarities and differences between the 5 postulates there. Group 1 and group 2, you'll see that they are different. And then I rotate, then group 3 is another one as well, so that they don't have the exact same slides right next to them, and that they can, I don't want to say not cheat, but I mean, it's not really a big deal if they cheat, they're just cheating themselves, of course, but that way they're not tempted, because the one above and below them will have different answers, so they can't just quickly look at the side and see where they belong. And then the homework for them would be this particular resource that I had found. I like that it had the common things that we might be needing, just like you gave us as a resource. I could envision myself utilizing a tool like that as we build onto it, almost like a virtual or interactive notebook where we could continually to build on the definitions and postulates and properties and all the things that we need to be successful in geometry. But specifically, their homework would be all of number 1, where they just have to identify which following congruency statement would be appropriate, or of course, if there was not enough information to practice the different reasonings. All right, the next day we would do another classroom starter together, and this time we would work on the actual proofs of congruent triangles, and then we'll do some group work, and then I have an assignment. I should also say that the assignment from the day prior would also include some Khan Academy as practice as well, so I could get some instantaneous feedback. Our standards covered are the following, and then our learning objectives, so the learner will be able to do the following after our lesson. So the which one doesn't belong is a little different. I have more than 4 objects here, but I found this which one doesn't belong triangle piece from a website. I've got all my sources listed below, but how I kind of tackle the which ones don't belong currently is that we have these X shapes, if you will, and they're just supposed to place that over the shape they feel does not belong in the set. And then each student will move to slide 23 or 24 and anonymously tell me which letter they chose and justify why they chose that one doesn't belong in the set. And then I do tell them to prepare to share your thoughts with the class. So depending upon the sources or reasonings that I see in slide 23 or 24, I might highlight some that pair with the objective for the day and ask them to explain themselves a little bit further. Of course, ask for volunteers first, but if there was 1 or 2 that were pretty notable, that is where I would grab them. Okay, so then some helpful theorems, definitions, or postulates that we might utilize. Again, I would provide these as the basis of a note-taking feature, and we would fill in the blanks together or highlight them in a pre-created handout similar to what you had done. Or again, if I did like an interactive notebook or something of that nature, kind of highlight the ones that we might want to be looking at that will be beneficial. And of course, these aren't the only ones that we might see, but these are some ones that I felt continually come up as I was looking through different proofs, as I was working through the assignment that you had us do this week, etc. So then I go through a proof of each one of the 5 postulates with an example. You'll notice in these examples, nothing is marked on the diagram. I think it's really important to have those markings and go through those steps together as we build the proof. I find that I'm very visual that way, given the information, and then build my shape or build the diagram as needed. So that was my justification for not putting the pieces on there, because I think sometimes students might get caught up perhaps. I could see that being a trouble source of knowing how to mark the diagram, especially when there are no markings. And so I think together we would do that. On the right-hand side, you'll see the different proofs for them. At the same time, I would leave this blank and we would fill that in together so that they would have something in their interactive notebook or a blank notable of some kind that they could fill in the blanks with me. They could work on and build the diagram with me as I do it on the board. And so there's one of these for each proof that we would be able to create together. The final thing that they would do, because I love group work, especially when paired appropriately, is a card sort activity. And so while I love technology, there is something to be said about things that are hands-on. So this time I chose to do a hands-on activity where each partner set of 2 or working individually, if you will, they would cut out all of the statements. They are currently clearly not in the correct order. And once they cut them out, they would move to their workspace on the last page. Here it is. On the page here, and they would paste those statements where they belong to create a cohesive proof. I really like that in my open math homework that you give us, that there's an outline. It really helps me feel more confident that I am on the right track before working on things independently, like a blank workspace, like the blank ones that you gave us this particular week. I'm not feeling as confident in myself. I like that I've got the statements that I need and then put them in the correct order. Helps me feel like I did it correctly that way, in a logical order based on the pieces that are given. So there are 5 of them listed here, and then 5 different cutouts that they need to reorder. So they would need to do this with scissors, glue sticks, and then they would have the packet where they could cut apart and then glue them back together as a group. And their homework is that same sheet that we had here, except then they would prove starting on page 3, do A through G is what I had suggested. And then H could be a bonus, if you will. So there are other ones that are on here. I feel like I would go over these together as a subsequent lesson or as extra above and beyond for now. I have listed down here all of my source citations where I received some images. So here was that which one doesn't belong that I did with the multiple triangles, the card sort Word file, I did get some examples from Tucker's Tangents here that I could include, and then that homework assignment that I just showed us from Matt's Winking's Math Lab's website. That was a mouthful. And then on this last page, I did find some clip art to create my presentation. And at the end of my presentations, I always have a virtual parking lot. This is where my students can ask questions, things they don't quite understand. And again, it's anonymous so that their voices are heard without fear of being judged from classmates. Most likely I would get rid of this is the one I just used for my current class, but this would, if they wanted to, they could send me an email directly from here. What I also like about these particular notes is, yes, they would also have that what's in front of them, but then they could also have this, I could leave it in Google Classroom or wherever our learning management system was, and it would have our classroom notes here. After class, I always turn off the edit feature so that they can't edit my slides when the lesson is done. So it's just view only, if you will. So there's my lesson. I hope it's what you're looking for. I hope I did it justice. I'll also share this lesson link, my Google Slides link, if you wanted to take a look at anything else, but feel free to ask questions. It was really kind of fun to build something out of the current content that I'm currently in. So thanks